Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent T. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we chat with the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting. Our guest today is none other than Roy Huntington, and we're going to talk about something that we've kind of touched on in other episodes, but we're going to devote the entire episode to it today, and that is, why would you even want to try and hit targets at 100 yards and beyond with your carry gun? Well, not only can you do it, there's some really good reasons why, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. Before we do, of course, please make sure you like and subscribe. That's how we keep coming to you free of charge every week. And of course, we ask you support our great sponsor, Armscor and Rock Island. We're going to hear from them, and then we'll talk to Roy about shooting at 100 yards.
The STK series blends the advantages of a striker-fired pistol with everything you love about your 1911. The STK100 Ultra has an updated frame with more aggressive side grip panels and checkered front and back straps. But we didn't stop there. You'll see that the optic footprint is now larger, which means even more options for your favorite red dot. The new STK from Rock Island Armory. Experience the power and precision of the Rock today. For more info, visit Armscor.com.
Hey there, Roy. You're out of your freaking mind. And you know why? Because you say that these I'm holding up, which are little snub-nosed revolvers, can actually defend my life out a long way. There's no way that little thing there, pew, 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 can be hitting stuff at that range. Or can it? So we're going to talk about that.
Well, Brent, you're right. It can't. So I guess our podcast is over.
Okay. Hey, it's good talking to you.
All right, it was good talking to everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
This was a great topic that you brought up, and we've talked about it, dabbled with it here, there, and yonder in the past. But there's a well-known saying, and I believe it started with instructor Tom Givens: 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 rounds, 3 seconds. That's most gunfights, and he's absolutely right. A lot of gunfights are about like that. But people get too spun up that that's all gunfights are, and we're going to talk about that today. So I know hitting with 100, I've hit steel with my pistol at 100 regularly on purpose. I know you do it darn near every day. So can real earth people, can they actually do that? Or should they even try it?
Yeah, I think they can do it. Of course, I've taught too many people how to do it. I mean, people who were shooting dinner plate size groups at 3 yards, a half hour later are hitting my 80-yard torso gong,
Yep.
And I equate it to the old, if you've ever worn ankle weights and then you run,
yep,
and then when you take them off, you feel like you can jump over the car.
Exactly. Yep.
And so if you can hit a precise target at 100 yards, that means that you have really good trigger control. Yep. And that you have good sight picture, you have good stance, you have good breathing, you have all that stuff.
And you have confidence, which is a factor. When we used to go through sniper school, I remember one of our instructors kept saying, I want you to be able to hit at 700 so that if you got to hit at 200, it's like a chip shot. And he was absolutely right. It's like when you're facing that tough shot at even 100, you're like, I can hit at 7. I can make small groups at 7. Or we did the same thing with the pistol. I know I can put bullets on steel at 100. This 35-yard shot across the street is not that big a deal.
Well, and it's true. And now I'm not saying that, because you shoot a 4-inch group at 100 yards that you're going to put every bullet in the same hole at 10 yards,
Right.
But what it will do, more than likely, is it will shrink your miss error significantly. Yep. So before you mastered that long-range shooting skill, maybe your 8-yard group would be 15 inches when you're shooting fast.
Yep.
But after you master trigger control and stance and breathing, and it becomes automatic, then now suddenly that same group may only be 5 inches or 6 inches or 8 inches, and when you're in defensive shooting, every percentage point counts. And so if you improve by 5%, well, that's a 5% better chance, and I'll take that any day.
Yep.
I think we've covered it before, and I know I've written a lot of articles about it, is people just assume that a short-barreled gun is not accurate. and they attributed that to the mechanical inadequacies of the gun. And we have all proven time after time after time that that's simply not the case.
Yep.
That it's operator error. And I know that I think there'll be a few links underneath in the more information. And we've posted some links to videos that we've done here shooting 22 handguns at 100 yards, shooting 38 revolvers, including a snub nose at 100 yards, and consistently hitting, let's call them kill shots, right, on a torso target. And I know, even then, though, there were comments when we first posted that years ago where people said, no, that's bullshit. This is all, he's just making this up. He was shooting from off camera 10 yards away and all that. And it's like, no, actually, the camera was there. You can see where I'm shooting. We don't do that.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we've all been to an indoor range, and next to us is some guy, and he's got some high-capacity 9mm auto, and he runs a silhouette target out to maybe 5 yards, right, 7 yards, and then he proceeds to shoot pretty much as fast as he can pull the trigger, and he puts about 200 rounds on the target. And, I mean, other than spending money and making brass that someone else can reload, because he probably doesn't reload, you haven't proved anything. I mean, if you like to do it and you have the money to spend and you're happy not really learning anything, okay, I don't mind. Go ahead. Go down the other end of the range line, though, if you would, because it's really noisy.
Yeah.
But after the first magazine or two, you really are not learning anything because there's so many holes in the target. You don't know what's happening with your trigger press. You don't know what's happening with your sight picture, and so I think when you see the guy, and we've all seen this guy, because I'm one of these guys too, is that they set up on the line, they'll run a bullseye target out to 15 yards or 25 yards, they'll take maybe 6 shots, they'll run the target back, they look at it, you can see they're thinking about it, right? They might look at their ammunition, put a new target up, run it back out to 25 yards, and so he's working on his sight picture and trigger squeeze. He's working on point of impact versus point of aim, and that's all stuff that comes when you become seasoned and you learn about it.
Yeah. You make a good point there that we ought to talk about a little bit. The speed of shooting. And there's no hard and fast rule, obviously, but starting with Louis Arbuck, who hopefully you know who Louis is, one of the greatest firearms instructors ever, and he was a friend of mine. But he was a big believer, and he was the first one to tell me this, of every round that goes down range should have a purpose behind it. And if you're doing mag dumps all the time, like we often see, like you said, Roy, about second, third, fourth, fifth, 12th shot in, what are you really learning there? And again, not saying a mag dump's not something you should try or whatever, but the point is, being a little more deliberate in what you're doing, whether it's at 3 yards or it's at 100 yards, is not a bad thing. And the corollary is, I often hear this, especially among less experienced / younger shooters. Well, this instructor, man, we are dumping mags all the time. We are shooting just as fast as we can. And there's a place for that, but are every one of those rounds going down with a purpose? Or are we just blasting as fast as we can? And then you start talking about spray and pray kind of thing. So just kind of wanted to, there's no hard and fast rule. There's no black and white line there, but I just wanted to kind of embroider what you said, Roy, that being a little more deliberate, putting a reason behind every trigger pull, that's how you become a better shooter. If you just want to make noise, I do that sometimes too, but if you're actually quote unquote training or trying to learn something, be deliberate. So,
well, I teach people how to shoot sometimes, and I explain that your trigger press is most important, followed up by sight picture, and then you have to have a comfortable stance. I think a comfortable stance is not really that critical because you can shoot while you walk and still hit the target, right?
Yep.
So, but what I've noticed is that, especially with newer shooters, and actually some seasoned shooters who already think they know what they're doing. Like we'll be practicing and I'll be talking to them through trigger presses and then I don't say anything and I watch them and they pull the trigger and they jerk the trigger or something like that. And then I always stop them and I always say, tell me what just happened. And then a lot of times they look at you and they go, I don't really know. I wasn't really paying attention.
What?
I know. But and it's the truth. And so if you come to the range and you want to learn, then you need to be thinking about every shot, every trigger press. You need to be paying attention. So when that guy that shot 6 shots on a 25-yard bullseye and brought it back in, he was looking at every shot because he remembered every shot. And he was thinking, okay, I pulled that one a little bit to the right. I remember when I did that. My trigger press wasn't as good as it could have been, and that explains that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But
exactly.
Meanwhile, the guy next to him is going bang, 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 bang. You can't think that fast when you're shooting. Now, yes, you see guys like Robbie Latham and Jerry Michulik and those kind of guys. So remember, they shoot, 100,000 rounds a year and have been doing it for 30 and 35 years. And so you get good. You can shoot fast. But even Robbie will tell you he's thinking constantly. He watches his front sight. He told me one time, he said when he shoots a falling plate rack, and you know how fast he does it. Bing, 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 right? 2 seconds, second and a half. He watches his front sight, and then it recoils up. He says he reacquires the front sight under recoil, and then follows it back down, and when it lines up, he slaps the trigger. He told me that, right? But he knows how to do that. And so he's good enough that he can think through every single shot no matter how fast he's shooting. Chances are good we mere mortals can't do that. So, but, okay, so why 100 yards? Well, here's what we do. Let's say you normally shoot at 7 to 10 yards. Well, what I challenge you to do is move that out to 15 or 25. So now get a good rested position, because you have to know, are my sights zeroed, or if they're fixed sights, what is your point of aim versus the point of impact? And that means that if your sights are aligned correctly, but the bullet hits 2 inches low and 2 inches to the right, well, maybe your barrel and sights are misaligned. In other words, so that means that's not your fault, right? But you need to establish that with your gun. If you have an adjustable sighted gun, then you zero it. So now from a rest, you know that at 25 yards, if you aim correctly and press correctly, the bullets are going to go where you're aiming. It's really important. So now take your time. Shoot 6 shots very slowly. Do it one every 30 seconds. It really doesn't matter. Concentrate on your trigger press. You don't want to really be breathing as you press the trigger, because what happens when you breathe, right? Things go up and down, And so do that at 25 yards. Do it, 25 shots. Now move that target into 10 yards, and it's going to look like it's toe-touching distance. And suddenly it's going to be really easy. You're going to think, well, hell, this is easy. Watch this. And you're going to shoot this little tiny group, right?
Yep.
So in a nutshell, that's what we're attempting to duplicate. So then after you have fun doing that, now maybe push it out to 35 yards. And pretty soon, you're going to be shooting at 50 yards. And I don't care what gun you're shooting. It could be a high point 380. It could be a high-end, fancy polymer pistol. It could be the top-end Les Baer Target 1911. You will be able to shoot groups up to the ability of the gun at 50 yards. And most of the time, that's like dinner plate size or smaller. I have a Freedom Arms. It's right here. It's a Freedom Arms Model 9745 Colt. It's got a 3.5-inch barrel. With Black Hills Cowboy loads, this gun will shoot 1.5 inches at 50 yards. Now, I can hand that gun to somebody else, and it'll shoot 25 inches at 50 yards. Okay? But after a little bit of work, we'll get him down shooting like that. So now you just have fun with that. Keep pressing it out if you can. And what you'll find is that if you take your time, if you have a 6-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 38 special revolver, that gun with good target wad cutters, if you do your job pressing the trigger smoothly and consistently, it will shoot about 4 to 5 inches at 100 yards. And people scoff, And I if they're here, I say, well, let's go outside for a minute.
Yeah.
and we put a target up out there, and lo and behold, it's easy to keep all the shots on a dinner plate. And if you have a good day, you can do better than that. I remember one time I was at Thunder Ranch, and we were having a conversation like this. One of the students, he was saying, "Well, there's no reason to practice beyond 15 or 25 yards, right?" And I know Clint's like over here listening to this because he'll push it out to 50 yards, right?
Yeah.
And he just like shakes his head and walks away. And so I'm talking to this guy, and then so I asked Clint. It was a gal, and she was a real good shooter. Now that I think about it, and I asked Clint, and I said, "Hey, do you mind? Can we set up a target at 100 yards?" He laughed. He said, "Yeah, go ahead." Right. So we went back. We set up silhouette targets at 100 yards. I had a Les Bear Thunder Ranch Special, which is a fixed sight 5-inch, kind of a standard Les Bear basic 1911, which are still capable of very, very good accuracy. So we lay down prone, and she shot first. And it was like it was pretty good group. It was like maybe 15 inches, and so she looked at me and she said, "See, if you can shoot good up close, you could shoot good far away." And I said, "Well, you certainly did very good there." I said, "Let me try to." So I took my time and I shot, and I was fortunate too, but it was about a 5-inch group. And part of the secret too is that you aim for where the head attaches to the shoulders,
right?
Because it gives you a really good, strong aiming point. Chances are good if she was just aiming at the center of the bullseye, that accounts for some of that spread. But I had a convert, and she just went, I hadn't thought of all that stuff. And so...
Because of 3 yards, 3 rounds, and 3 seconds.
Well, that's it. And I'm not saying Tom is wrong, because he's right.
Right.
Just yesterday, a reader asked me something about, where did you get this? Because we did a podcast a while ago, and we were talking about autos versus revolvers and cops shooting more than they used to. And, you see these videos with like 4 cops doing mag dumps on some guy, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, it used to be 2 to 4 shots from a revolver seemed to solve all the problems. And he asked me, where did you get that information? And so some of it was from a study I did when I was editor of Police Magazine. I did a survey of readers, and they all responded with what gun were they using, what ammo were they using, and what was the distance that they shot at, how many rounds did they shoot. And it was 2 to 4 rounds. That was the going deal, right, with revolvers. And so I told this guy that was the case. And I know. And the other thing was 3 to 7 yards encompassed the overwhelming majority of the shootings. Yep. And so I gave him that information. But what I found interesting, though, is that there were 2 or 3 shootings at 25 to 35 yards, 1 shooting at about 55 yards, and I remember 1 shooting that they measured it out, and it was 78 yards.
My.
I know. And so 3 shots, 3 seconds, 3 yards. Well, except 1 shot, 15 seconds at 80 yards.
Exactly.
And
as is commonly taught, distance gives you time. So it's not like you're just going to yank your smoke wagon and take that 78-yard shot. Hopefully you'll maybe have an opportunity to brace off something, get a little better sight picture, maybe even breathe a little bit despite bullets flying, and being able to do that. And that was one of the things that we kind of got into technique before we really talked about it. But you went there about, the whole why. And, there have been a number of both civilian, non-law enforcement, and law enforcement shootings where if I had a rifle, I'd have grabbed a rifle, but I didn't have a rifle. Think about active shooters in malls, sometimes even in churches. The one shooting.
Remember that guy in the mall took that like 45 or 50-yard shot?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That mall's about 30 miles from my house. Yeah. And that young man has apparently had no formal training, and he just took the shot, and he took the guy out. The guy took the hit and ran into the bathroom and was what we call DRT, which is dead right there. And so how many lives did he save by being able to take that, roughly 50-yard shot? So it does happen, and there's no reason not to. because, as we've said, confidence building and just the idea that you may run into that. And you know what kills me is guys will argue, well, I'd grab my AR and I'd grab this and I'd do that. Well, that's great if you have that option, but I generally don't hit the shopping mall carrying a rifle on my back. They tend to frown on that. So, you've got a well-rounded individual is prepared for anything within reasonable that you can come up with. And it's reasonable that you may have to take a 100-yard pistol shot to save yourself or save somebody else.
Plus it's fun. I mean, it really is. It's fun. It helps to build your skills. I was at a gun site years ago with Smith & Wesson, and there were a bunch of writers and editors at the time. And Paul Pluff, who was at Smith & Wesson there, it was like one of every SKU for J-frame revolvers they had. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It's like he had a cool 5-inch barrel J-frame, and I mean, just everyone you can think of, he brought one, which was really interesting. And so we all shot him and everything. At the time, Gunsight had this one range, and they had steel silhouettes out at 25, 50, 100, 150, 200, and just standard steel silhouettes. And so we were laughing and joking, and somebody was pretty proud because he was hitting the 25-yard steel silhouette pretty regularly. And I said, I egged him on, right? I said, well, why don't you try that 50? And it's like, oh, I don't think, I mean, these guns, beyond that distance. And I said, well, let's try. So he's missing all of it. So I picked one of the guns up off the table. And one round tells you what the windage and elevation is going to be, right? And so I hit the target. And of course they go, oh, that was lucky. You're an idiot. You can't do that again.
Yeah.
So of course, bang, tink, bang, tink, bang, tink, right? And he said, well, do it at 100. So the same thing. One shot kind of gives you the range, and then watch your trigger press, double action, old PPC shooter here, right? And first shot was a miss. Then I knew where the bullet was hitting. And then tink, 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 tink. Now, by now, everybody wants to try it, right? And everybody eventually got to do it because, I was helping them, and there were other couple good shooters there, and they were saying, well, watch your trigger press, and then but it blew their minds. And so I said, well, let's try the 200, and it was interesting. It was like 2 feet of elevation and favor right because of the crosswind,
Yeah.
But you could hit it, I mean, almost more often than not,
Yeah.
It was like bang, wait, tink,
wait for it.
Yeah, wait for it, clang,
That's funny.
And it was really a topic of conversation after that. And these are all cops and instructors and, seasoned shooters.
Yeah.
But they had not really kind of done that before.
Yeah.
I carry go ahead.
I was going to say, and you kind of touched on it, I will make a prediction. If you go to the range and you take, say, steel out there to get a reactive target, and there's more than one shooter, if you start shooting at 100, it will become a competition. I guarantee it. There's a 100% chance it will turn into a competition.
It is. Well, and it goes back to, it's the fun factor because, I mean, because you've shot at it. I have a 100-yard steel square. That's, I don't know, a foot by a foot, give or take a little bit. Well, if we have guests over for dinner or something and we have some time before dinner, I grab the little 32 H&R Magnum or my 32-20, little Browning low wall and a box of ammo. We go out on the deck and I say, see that target? So I'll shoot it, bang, tink, right? Here you go. Well, the game is on. Even non-shooters, they love it. It's so... I don't know. It's that old. You point your finger and smite at a distance, right?
Yeah.
It's like tink. But I recommend it. I carry a Ruger LCP Max in my pocket, so it's a little 380 pocket pistol. I once or twice a week when I step outside on my patio here, I will shoot the 80-yard torso with it. So I usually keep 10 shots in it, and I will hit it. If I'm having a good day, maybe 8 times out of 10. You know? But like you say, I cheat. I do it all the time. But I know people can't believe it. They say, I can't believe you'll never be able to do that. And so, no, actually, you can do it. Yeah, anybody can do it. So
exactly.
So, yeah,
well,
just say.
I was just thinking back in the day, Roy, we've talked about what cop revolver training was like. We always dreaded 50-yard line, and everybody had to do it. And, you felt like, especially if they started you on the 50, that was the worst. You felt like you needed to call for elevation and, check the humidity and wind direction and all that. Whereas if you started at the 3 and moved back, and now I know a lot of places, they don't make you shoot at 50 because, that's hard.
That'll make you shoot at 25.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we used to shoot, PPC shooting, practical police combat is one of the most common monikers. And so double action revolvers, 38 special, standing, sitting, kneeling, prone, out to 50 yards. Well, it was not uncommon for grandmasters to have a 1.5 to 2 inch total group for the 60 shots.
Mm-hmm.
And right hand barricade, left hand barricade, weak hand, strong hand to 50 yards. And it's interesting because I knew a lot of these guys, and a lot of those guys had been in shootings on duty, and they were still here. And I heard
the
some
criminal chose poorly.
The criminal chose poorly, but I think, and I imagine there are instructors who will say otherwise, because that fast and shoot up close and all that kind of stuff. Cut your teeth at some long distance, develop your skills, your trigger press, your sight picture, your stance, all that kind of stuff, and then start moving the targets in. And trust me, 10 yards, 15 yards is going to look like you could reach out and touch the target.
Yep. Absolutely.
So do it. I don't care what gun you have. The next time, the next time you're at the range, if it's a 25-yard indoor range or a 20-yard or 15-yard, doesn't matter. Scale the target down. Get a blank target, turn the back over, do some circles on it with a Sharpie pen, like silver dollar size or something. Run that sucker out to 10 or 15 yards. One shot in each one of those will tell you more than 200 rounds banging away, at a torso target, because you'll see where you're hitting.
Yep. I was laughing as you were telling that story. I was thinking about what we used to do. We'd scale down targets and we'd shoot at different things. And then we'd have to put up a B-27 for qualification.
Yeah. It seemed like an aircraft carrier.
Exactly. and if somebody did miss, it's like, how could you possibly miss that giant piece of paper that's at arm's length, essentially?
And if you don't believe us, keep an open mind. Just go try it, okay?
Yeah.
Well, however
absolutely.
you shoot is fine, and go enjoy yourself. But do yourself a favor and actually try to hone your skills. We did an IUB files some years ago. It was a guy who was a friend of mine, and in the late 70s, he was carrying a 4-inch Smith & Wesson Model 66 with 357 Magnum ammunition, which they all did in those days. But he was a very accomplished PPC shooter, which means he was shooting thousands and thousands of rounds a year, double action from that revolver, standing, sitting, He really had this thing dialed in. And so he had a running gun battle with this guy, and eventually the guy crashed. And then they started running across the field, and then he turned and took a couple shots back at my friend. So my friend stood up, put that gun out, staged the trigger, took a little elevation, shot one shot, and knocked that son of a bitch down.
You gotta love that.
I know. And that's why. And so if you say that'll never happen, well, you're wrong.
It does. It does. Well, in the few minutes we've got left, you're instructing our audience and me, Roy. We've just walked up to the line. We've got our, let's make it easy. It's a 4-inch Model 38K frame, okay? And you're going to walk us through just what you need to do to make that gun hit a 100-yard plate. Okay.
Well, first of all, I would bench it, which just means do what we said before. Rest your wrists. I like to do double action trigger pull. I shoot most accurately that way, but if you're shooting single action, that's fine. And you want to make sure the sights are aligned. So dial your sights and make sure you're all zeroed. Watch your trigger press. It's got to be excellent. It's got to be smooth. It's got to be consistent, because a trigger press is way more important than a sight picture. I mean,
Yep.
hugely more important, because you can have a mediocre sight picture, but if you have an excellent trigger press, you'll hit the target every time. And so now what I would do, if you're limited to 25 yards or something like that, is I would do just what we said earlier, which is a series of little round circles on a target. And then I would shoot at them from the bench for a while until you're getting consistent hits. I mean, if you're still erratic, that means you're hurrying the trigger. So shoot from the bench until you're getting consistent hits at whatever distance you can shoot. And then just simply keep pressing that out a little bit. And it's not going to happen overnight, but you will reach a point, trust me on this, when you're doing this at 50 yards and maybe by 6-inch paper plates, because they're great targets, you put up 10 of those on a target at 50 yards and do the same thing, one shot on each one. Take your time, look through binoculars after every shot, see where the bullet went. So do that. Now bring that target back into 15 or 25 yards, and you're going to lose your mind, because it's astounding. You're going to hit like a laser beam.
Yep.
And the same thing applies if you have the ability to shoot at 100. Go ahead, put 10 or 12-inch white paper plates out at that distance. The first few shots, you'll find out what your elevation has to be, because the 38 specials could drop 10 inches. It depends on the load. So I like to put a row of paper plates top to bottom, and then shoot like at the top one, and then you'll see where the round hits. So now you know your aiming point, right?
Yep. 2 points I wanted you to get into is talk about breathing, because there's a lot of different theories, and the way I do it is like I do with rifle shooting. I don't take a big inhale, but I wait to what they call my natural respiratory pause, which is you're breathing and then you feel like everything's lined up, and as soon as you've breathed out, you just stop for a second, and I kind of do that Zen centering thing, and then start your trigger pull. No hurry, no rush. But if something doesn't feel right, then you'll stop and start breathing again. Because the worst thing you can do is, okay, when the longer it goes on, chasing those sights, it won't work. But how do you do it, and talk about the breathing?
Well, you're right. I see people, they'll hold their breath until they can't breathe anymore, and the gun starts to shake, and then you see them jerk the trigger because I want to get the shot off. Is that there is no hurry. If you only shoot one good shot today, then that's good. You did the best you could. You took one shot, and now pack up and go home. But what I do, I agree with you. You don't want to take a deep breath, because that can over-oxygenate you a little bit, get your heart beating a little faster. So you just kind of breathe in normal, and then sometimes I'll take a breath in just a little more than normal, let about half out, and then in the meantime, I have already staged the trigger. So I'm already at what they call the wall if it's a semi-auto, or with a double-action revolver, I've already staged it. And so then when you take that half breath, or you let out to the half breath, and then you finish the press. Mm-hmm. And because that way you're not running out of oxygen, because you run out of oxygen in about 5 seconds, give or take a little bit. Your body starts thinking, breathe, 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 breathe. So now you're not thinking about sight picture and trigger squeeze.
Exactly.
So, just don't be in a hurry.
Yep. And one other tip that, again, I do be interested to hear what you say, is if you're benching it or resting on something, I will take a second to do to check for what they call natural point of aim. I'll get all set, I'm ready to shoot, and then I'll close my eyes for 2-3 seconds and open them. And if the gun is suddenly now pointing down here or up there or wherever, but not at the target, that means you've contorted your body to the point that it's not mechanically aligned with the target. So I reposition myself, and you certainly notice it with a scope. That's as simple as closing your eyes and then opening it. And if now the crosshairs are pointed, at the tree above it, well, you need to readjust yourself. The least amount of mechanical torsion and twist and muscle support, you're using, the better. So you should naturally be set, in a position to put the gun on target and keep it on target, even if your eyes aren't making you.
I agree. I think people overthink it a little bit. When I have taught people how to shoot here, they always say, well, what should my stance be? Like if we're standing and shooting, I always just say, well, stand comfortably.
Yeah. On the ground.
Yeah, so they stand there, and I say, okay, do you feel comfortable now? You feel kind of centered? Okay? All right, good. Then let's shoot from here.
Yep.
Yep. The only thing I do after that sometimes is people tend to want to lean back, right? So I encourage them to kind of roll their shoulders forward just a little bit, and mostly because even if they don't roll forward, that stops that rolling back, that they do.
Yeah.
But you're right. If I'm showing somebody how to shoot a rifle on a bench here, invariably they'll get down. You can see that they're kind of tight and they're not comfortable and stuff. And I always say, well, wait a minute. Let's adjust the bags. Let's move you to the side a little bit, and then you can see when you get them all dialed in because they're like, okay.
Yeah, that works.
Now we can shoot, Yeah. So,
exactly.
I don't know.
Good stuff. And hopefully we've given you a reason why, or a couple of reasons why you should be able to shoot out to 100 and beyond. And I would challenge folks, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. Tell us honestly the longest shot you've made. Hunting, maybe self-defense, but and one shot doesn't really... One shot might be lucky, but if you can regularly hit that rock out on the berm at 125, talk about it. Tell us how you do it, and brag just a little bit. So leave us a comment down there at the bottom. So anyway, Roy, good stuff, and now you've got me all juiced up. I need to go out and take this. This is a Charter Arms Coyote 380, and I'm thinking Mrs. Editor may like this, so we need to get it out, and I'll see if I can get her on steel at 100. So appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and we'll do it again soon.
You bet. Thank you, sir.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my chat with Roy Huntington, and we've inspired you to hit the range and see if you can hit at 100 and beyond with your carry gun. You'll find that it brings you a lot of benefits, and even if you have to shoot 3 seconds, 3 rounds at 3 yards, you'll be a lot better at it. Before we go, a couple of quick things. Of course, make sure you like and subscribe. We hammer on that, but that's really how you can support what we're doing, and it's how we keep coming to you free of charge each week. Also, make sure you check out fmgpubs.com. That's where you can subscribe to either Guns Magazine or American Handgunner, and you can buy our special interest publications such as Roy's Insider, John Connor's Odd Angry Shot, and a whole lot of other great stuff there. Again, that's fmgpubs.com. And of course, please support the company that supports us, our great friends at Rock Island Armory and Armscor.
The new STK from Rock Island Armory. Experience the power and precision of the Rock today. For more info, visit armscor.com.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. On behalf of everybody that works so hard here at FMG Publications to bring you all this great shooting stuff, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.